Designed by McDonnell Douglas and Northrop, the FA-18 was derived from the latter YF-17 in the mid-1970s for use by the United States Navy and Marine Corps. The Hornet is also used by the Air Force for Air Forces of several other nations, and formerly by the U.S. Navy's Flight Demonstration Squadron, the Blue Angels. Bunch of fucking legends. Not even kidding, the Blue Angels are badasses. The FA-18 was designed to be a highly versatile aircraft due to its avionics, cockpit displays, and excellent aerodynamic characteristics, with the ability to carry a wide variety of weapons. The aircraft can perform fighter escort, fleet air defense, suppression of enemy air defenses, air interdiction, close air support, and aerial reconnaissance. Its versatility and reliability have proven it to be a valuable carrier asset. The Hornet entered operational service in 1983 and first saw combat action during 1986, United States bombing of Libya, and subsequently participated in the 1991 Gulf War and 2003 Iraq War. The FA-18 Hornet served as the baseline for the Boeing FA-18EF Super Hornet. Its larger evolutionary redesign, which supplanted both the older Hornet and the F-14 Tomcat in the U.S. Navy. The United States Navy started the Naval Fighter Attack Experimental VFAX program to procure a multi-role aircraft to replace the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk, the A-7 Corsair II, and the remaining McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs, and to complement the Grumman F-14 Tomcat. Vice Admiral Kent Lee, then head of the Naval Air Systems Command, was the lead advocate for the VFAX against strong opposition from many Navy officers, including Vice Admiral William D. Hauser, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Air Warfare, the highest-ranking naval aviator. In August 1973, Congress mandated that the Navy pursue a lower-cost alternative to the F-14. Grumman proposed a stripped F-14 designed the F-14X, while McDonnell Douglas proposed a naval variant of the F-15, but both were nearly as expensive as the F-14. That summer, Secretary of Defense James R. Schlesinger ordered the Navy to evaluate the competitors in the Air Force's lightweight fighter program, the General Dynamics YF-16 and the Northrop YF-17. The Air Force competition specified a day fighter with no strike capability. In May 1974, the House Armed Service Committee redirected $34 million from the VFAX to a new program, the Navy Air Combat Fighter Program, intended to make maximum use of the technology developed for the LWF program. Redesigning the YF-17. Though the YF-16 won the LWF competition, the Navy was skeptical that an aircraft with one engine and narrow landing gear could be easily or economically adapted to carrier service, and refused to adopt the F-16 derivative. On the 2nd of May, 1975, the Navy announced its selection of the YF-17, since the LWF did not share the design requirements of the VFAX. The Navy asked McDonnell Douglas and Northrop to develop a new aircraft from the design and principles of the YF-17. On the 1st of March, 1977, Secretary of the Navy W. Graham Claytor announced that the F-18 would be named the Hornet, after the characteristics of the hornet insect. It also shares the namesake with ships that had borne the name Hornet since the Revolutionary War, along with the USS Hornet CV-8 and the USS Hornet CV-12 that served during World War II. Northrop had partnered with McDonnell Douglas as a secondary contractor on the NACF to capitalize on latter experience in building carrier aircraft, including the widely used F-4 Phantom II. On the F-18, The two companies agreed to evenly split component manufacturing, with McDonnell Douglas conducting the final assembly. McDonnell Douglas would build the wings, stabilators, and the forward fuselage, while Northrop would build the center and aft fuselage and vertical stabilizers. The McDonnell Douglas was the prime contractor for the naval versions, and Northrop would be the prime contractor for F-18L land-based versions, which Northrop hoped to sell on the export market. The F-18, initially known as McDonnell Douglas Model 267, was drastically modified from the YF-17 for carrier operations. The airframe, undercarriage, and tailhook were strengthened. Folding wings and catapult attachments were added, and the landing gear was widened. Another wheel was added to the front landing gear as well. To meet Navy range and reserves requirements, McDonnell Douglas increased fuel capacity by 4,460 pounds by enlarging the dorsal spine and adding 96-gallon fuel tank to each wing. A quote-unquote snag was added to the wing's leading edge, and stabilators to prevent an aeroelastic flutter discovered in the F-15 stabilator. The wings and stabilators were enlarged, the aft fuselage widened by 4 inches, and the engines canted outward at the front. These changes added 10,000 pounds to the gross weight, bringing it to 37,000 pounds overall. The YF-17's control system was replaced with a fully digital fly-by-wire system with quadruple redundancy, the first to be installed in a production fighter. Originally, plans were to acquire a total of 780 aircraft of 3 variants: the single-seat F-A-18A fighter and A-18A attack aircraft, differing only in avionics, and the dual-seat TF-18A, which retained the full mission capacity of the F-18 with a reduced fuel load. Following improvements in avionics and multifunction displays and a redesign of external store stations, the A-18A and F-18A were able to be combined into one aircraft. Starting in 1980, the aircraft began to be referred to as the FA-18A, and the designation was officially announced on the 1st of April 1984. The TF-18A was redesignated the FA-18B. Northrop developed the F-18L as a potential export aircraft, since it was not strengthened for carrier service. It was expected to be lighter and better performing, and a strong competitor to the F-16 Fighting Falcon, than being offered to American allies. The F-18L's normal gross weight was lighter than the F-18A by 7,700 pounds. Via lighter landing gear, lack of wing folding mechanism, reduced part thickness in areas, and low fuel carrying capacity, though the aircraft retained a lightened tailhook. The most obvious external difference was the removal of snags on the leading edge of the wings and stabilators. It still retained 71% commonality with the F-A-18 by parts, weight, and 90% of the high-value systems, including avionics, radar, and electronic countermeasure suite, though alternatives were offered. Unlike the F-A-18, the F-18L carried no fuel in its wings and lacked weapon stations on intakes. It had 3 underwing pylons on each side instead. The F-A-18L version followed to coincide with the U.S. Navy's F-A-18A as a land-based export alternative. This was essentially an F-A-18A lightened by about 2,500 to 3,000 pounds. Weight was reduced by removing the folding wing and associated actuators, implementing a simpler landing gear, single wheel nose gear, and cantilever oleo main gear, and changing to a land-based tailhook. The revised FA-18L included wing fuel tanks and fuselage stations of the FA-18A. Its weapons capacity would increase from 13,700 to 20,000 pounds, largely due to the addition of a third underwing pylon and strengthened wingtips. Compared to the F-18L, the outboard weapons pylons are closer to the wingtip missile rails because of the strengthened non-folding wing. The wingtip missile rails were designed to carry either AIM-7 Sparrow or Skyflash medium-range air-to-air missiles, in addition to AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, as found on the FA-18A. The FA-18L was strengthened for a 9G design load factor compared to the FA-18A's 7.5G factor. The partnership between McDonnell Douglas and Northrop soured over competition for foreign sales of the two models. Northrop felt that McDonnell Douglas would put the FA-18 in direct competition with the F-18L. In October 1979, Northrop filed a series of lawsuits charging that McDonnell was using Northrop technology developed for the F-18L for foreign sales of the FA-18 in violation of their agreement, and asked for a moratorium on foreign sales of the Hornet. McDonnell Douglas countersued, alleging Northrop illegally used FA-18 technology in its F-20 Tiger Shark. A settlement was announced on April 8, 1985 for all of the lawsuits. McDonnell Douglas paid Northrop $50 million for rights to sell the FA-18 wherever it could. Additionally, the companies agreed on McDonnell Douglas as the prime contractor, with Northrop as the principal subcontractor. As the principal subcontractor, Northrop would produce the rear section of the FA-18 A, B, C, D, E, and F, while McDonnell Douglas will produce the rest of the final assembly to be performed. At the same time the settlement, Northrop had ceased to work on the F-18L. Most export orders for the F-18L were captured by the F-16 or the FA-18. The F-20 Tiger Shark did not enter production, and although the program was not officially terminated until the 17th of November 1986, it was dead by mid-1985. During flight testing, the snag on the leading edge of the stabilators was filled in, and the gap between the leading edge extension and the fuselage mostly filled in. The gaps, called the boundary layer air discharge slots, controlled the vortices generated by the LEX, or leading edge extensions, and presented clean air to the vertical stabilizers at high angles of attack. But they also generated a great deal of parasitic drag, worsening the problem of the FA-18's inadequate range. McDonnell filled in 80% of the gap, leaving a small slot to bleed air from the engine intake. This may have contributed to early problems with the fatigue cracks appearing on the vertical stabilizers due to extreme structural loads, resulting in short grounding in 1984 until the stabilizers were strengthened. Starting in May 1988, a small vertical fence was added to the top of each LEX, again, leading edge extensions, to broaden the vortices and direct them away from the vertical stabilizers. This also provided a minor increase in controllability as a side effect. The FA-18s of early versions had a problem with insufficient rate of roll, exacerbated by the insufficient wing stiffness, especially with heavy underwing ordnance loads. The first production FA-18A flew on the 12th of April 1980 after a production run of 380 FA-18As, including the 9 assigned to the Flight Systems Development. Manufacture shifted to the FA-18C in September of 1987. improvements and changes. In the 1990s, the U.S. Navy forced the need to replace its aging A-6 Intruders and A-7 Corsair IIs with no replacement in development. To answer this deficiency, the Navy commissioned the development of the FA-18EF Super Hornet. Despite its designation, it is not just an upgrade of the FA-18 Hornet, but rather a new, larger airframe using the design concepts of the Hornet. Hornets and Super Hornets will serve complementary roles in the United States Navy carrier fleet until the Hornet A through D models are completely replaced by F-35C Lightning IIs. Although the airframe was originally designed for service life of 6,000 flight hours, the Marines have chosen to extend the use of certain FA-18s up to 10,000 flight hours due to the delays in the F-35B variant. The FA-18 is a twin-engine mid-wing multi-mission tactical aircraft. It is highly maneuverable due to its good thrust-to-weight ratio, digital fly-by-wire control system, and leading-edge extensions, which allow the Hornet to remain controllable at high angles of attack. The trapezoidal wing has 20-degree sweep back on the leading edge and a straight trailing edge. The wing has full span, leading edge flaps, and the trailing edge has a single slotted flaps and ailerons over the entire span of the wing. Canted vertical stabilizers are another distinguishing design element, one among several other elements that enable the Hornet's excellent high angle of attack ability, including oversized horizontal stabilizers, oversized trailing edge flaps that operate as flaperons, large full-length leading edge slats, and flight control computer programming that multiplies the movement of each control surface at low speeds and moves the vertical rudders inboard instead of simply left and right. The Hornet's normally high angle of attack performance envelope was put to rigorous testing and enhanced in the NASA F-18 High Alpha Research Vehicle, HARV. NASA used the F-18 HARV to demonstrate flight handling characteristics at high angles of attack of 65 to 70 degrees using thrust vectoring vanes. The F-18 stabilizers were also used as canards on NASA's F-15S MTD. The Hornet was among the first aircraft to heavily use malfunction displays, which at the switch of a button allowed the pilot to perform either fighter or attack roles or both. The force multiplier ability gives the operational commander more flexibility to employ tactical aircraft in a fast-changing battle scenario. It was the first Navy aircraft to incorporate a digital multiplexing avionics bus, enabling easy upgrades. The Hornet was designed to reduce maintenance and, as a result, has required far less downtime than its heavier counterparts, the F-14 Tomcat and A-6 Intruder. Its mean time between failures is 3 times greater than any other Navy strike aircraft. It requires half the maintenance time. Its General Electric's F-404 engines were also innovative in that they were designed to operability, reliability, and maintainability first. The engine, while unexceptional in rated performance, demonstrates exceptional robust under various conditions and is resistant to stall and flameout. The F-404 engine connects to the airframe at only 10 points and can be replaced without special equipment. A 4-person team can remove the engine within 20 minutes. The aircraft has a top speed of Mach 1.8 at 40,000 feet. The engine air inlets of the Hornet, like that of the F-16, are simpler, fixed design, while those of the F-4, F-14, and F-15 have variable geometry or variable intake ramp air inlets. In 1989, U.S. Marine Corps study found that the single-seat fighters were well suited to air-to-air combat missions, while dual-seated fighters were favored for complex strike missions against heavy air and ground defenses in adverse weather. The question being not so much as to whether a second pair of eyes would be useful, but as to having a second crewman sit in the same fighter and a second fighter. Single-seat fighters that lacked wingmen were shown to be especially vulnerable. And the one you've seen on your screen the entire time is FA-18EF. Or F. The E and the F are, the E is the single seat, F is the two-seater. Let's just make it simple, right? Both officially named the Super Hornet carry over the name and design concept of the original FA-18, but have been extensively redesigned by McDonnell Douglas. The Super Hornet, which began production in 1995, has a new 25% larger airframe, larger rectangular air intakes, more powerful GE F414 engines based on FA-18's F404, and an upgraded avionics suite. Like the Marine Corps' FA-18D, the Navy's FA-18F carries a naval flight officer as a second crew member in a weapons system officer role. The Super Hornet is unofficially known as Rhino in operational use. This name was chosen to distinguish the newer variants from the Legacy F, 18A, 18B, 18C, and 18D Hornet and avoid confusion during carrier deck operations. The Super Hornet is also operated by Australia. It is the FA-18 in all of its glory. Catch y'all next time. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you're at in the world. Enjoy your time because it may be limited. You never know. You might eat something that you thought was one thing, but it wasn't that thing you thought it was, and you have some kind of weird adverse reaction to it, and it kind of sends you off into the graveyard. As low of a possibility as that is, and as much as we don't want that to happen, it could happen, so enjoy your time.